All right, welcome back to On the Ball, the video podcast series from Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. Really excited for the two guests today, two of my, at least I consider my two of my best friends in the athletic department. We'll hear what they have to say. They might completely disagree with that, but Alison Wenzel and Ricky Thrash, who are athletic administrators here at Vanderbilt, both doing amazing work on behalf of student athletes, and both had really interesting summers. And so when I was thinking about a guest for this week, I thought that it might be insightful for our fans and others that follow college sports to learn about some of the international trips and opportunities that student athletes have these days. So Alison and Ricky, thank you both for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah,
right,
thanks
well
for having us.
let's start with we'll start with ladies first. So Alison, tell us first of all, like, I think I first met you maybe when you worked for the Sounds. I mean, you've been involved in Nashville sports for a while, and you're sitting in an office in the first floor of McGugin, where I first worked in the early 90s, like from 92 to 97. I was in that same office suite. And so every time I come to see you, I have memories of Rod Williamson and Tony Neely and Lou Harris, names that old Vandy people remember. But tell us how you arrived in that chair here at Vanderbilt.
Absolutely. So I've actually been at Vanderbilt since 2004. So I am going on my 19th year at Vanderbilt, which seems hard to believe when I say that out loud. I went to Florida undergrad and grad, and then got my first job here as an intern with the marketing department. I was an intern with the Sounds the previous summer, so you were right on that. But worked for Eric Nichols. He was my first boss in the marketing department, and just have been really lucky to have the opportunity to explore different paths within athletics. So Champs Life Skills is an opportunity that I had. That's how we talk about student athlete development nowadays. And then I was able to be an academic coordinator as well, to where I am now as the director of our Ingram Center for Student Athlete Success.
Terrific. All right, and Ricky, it seems like you have your hands in so many things that are happening here at Vanderbilt Athletics. It seems like you've worked in sports your whole career probably, but we know that's not the case. So you had maybe a slightly different path to the chair that you're in today. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess maybe a circuitous route, but started working in admissions. I worked in admissions at my alma mater, which is Sanford University in Birmingham, Alabama. I worked there for 2 years. Then I jumped in the transfer portal and transferred to Vandy, and worked at Vandy admissions from 2009 until 2021. So, Allison, I think we're like 5 years, so like I'm going into year 15, I guess.
I got you
Um,
beat.
yeah, oh yeah, it's not even close, right? Yeah. Um, but yeah, so that's how I ended up at Vanderbilt. And in my role in admissions, I had a touch point with athletics. I was kind of the athletics liaison, but on the admission side. So got to know some awesome folks who worked over here in Magoogan. Um, Namely, like our primary contact right when I started was Candace. And so kind of seeing her trajectory as an outsider, kind of looking in was really amazing. And then some opportunities arose in, gosh, early 2021 to make a jump over and come over to the athletic department, and to maybe bring some institutional knowledge and a little bit of a skill set over to help, specifically with student athletes, specifically around the enrollment process. Um, and so that's what I've done. I get a chance to work with awesome people like Allison every day. And it's been great. I appreciate you saying that you feel like I've been here for forever, because I feel like I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. But like I said, I think I say this all the time. Like, I've learned that so much of life is jazz and not classical music. And we're improving, we're scatting and everything as we go. So cool.
That's a great way to put it. All right, so this idea of travel in college sports, I remember So I've worked at Vanderbilt maybe for 12 years, 6 years this time, 6 years back in the early 90s. And back in those days, I mean, the significant travel beyond just like SEC road trips might be a trip to Hawaii, for a Maui Invitational basketball tournament. Or occasionally, I know the Vanderbilt basketball, even like years before I got here, maybe traveled to Japan or to Taiwan for play a few goodwill type of international basketball games. But it's completely different now. I don't want to give away too much, but I believe that our teams have an opportunity every 4 years, if they want to make an international trip as a team. But then there are also service trips that might bring together student athletes for multiple sports, to go interesting places around the world. And that's all in addition to study abroad, which in the old days, student athletes never really had a chance to study abroad. But I know that was a priority of the late David Williams to make sure that our Vanderbilt student athletes did have that opportunity. And so both of you had chances to travel with student athletes for different reasons, different ways. Coming back to you, Allison, tell us about the trip that you had with the swimming team and how that fits into a bigger picture of what's available to student athletes here.
Absolutely. So in addition to being the director of the Ingram Center, I'm also a sport administrator for our swim program. So in talking with our coach, Jeremy Organ, kind of last year around this time, it was, hey, what could this look like for swimming to potentially take a trip to New Zealand? So in thinking through possible collaborations with campus, our academic coordinator, student services coordinator, Nate Bell, worked with Professor Gil Gualda in the Earth and Environmental Studies department to develop a Maymester that would allow our student athletes to not only go on this international trip, swim in New Zealand, swim at their National Aquatic Center, but also get Maymester credit for a course that Gil would teach while we were in country. So once we kind of got through the logistics of what does this look like to take a group of 40 over to New Zealand and have a class component to it, it was really one of the most amazing experiences, I think, for some of our swimmers to get that international experience. But to be able to involve Professor Gualda in this experience, he brought just so much knowledge. He's been to New Zealand many, many times. So he was kind of our in-country guide. We connected with different professors in New Zealand as well to help guide some of the classroom sessions. But it was a phenomenal opportunity for our student athletes to widen their global perspective, come back with a different kind of feeling about what is this world that we live in, and to not be so narrowly focused on kind of just what's going on here and what's going on with ourselves, like what's happening over in New Zealand with their government, what's happening with the Maori culture over in New Zealand, things like that. I think the opportunity was pretty amazing for our swimmers.
Wow. So how did do you know, like, how did New Zealand come up as the place to go? And can you tell us more about the content of the class itself and what they were learning?
Absolutely. So Coach Jeremy Organ, this was his brainchild. He was excited to get the girls to a place in the world that they hadn't been before and likely would never go again. This is an opportunity to, provide this for our team from a team building standpoint, but also from a personal development standpoint of like, when else are you going to New Zealand? Maybe not ever. I don't know. So getting them out of their comfort zone, putting them in a different space, again, from a team building aspect, it was great. The different shared experiences that we got to go through. We went zip lining, lots of different cultural tours, again, with the Maori culture. The All Blacks is a huge thing in New Zealand. That's the national rugby team. We got to do a behind the scenes All Blacks experience, and the team culture that team is able to provide is something to aspire to. So that was another good opportunity for our student athletes to see what that culture is like on a national team like the All Blacks. So yeah, Jeremy, let's put it on him. He's the reason we went to New Zealand.
Okay. And then the Maymester course itself, what was the subject matter there? What were the students learning?
Absolutely. So New Zealand is actually very volcanic in nature, with the way that a lot of their like just it's set up from all the earth and environmental sciences stuff. So Professor Gualda had already done a Maymester in New Zealand actually previously. So he had all these connections. He knew all the places that the student athletes would need to go. They did a lot of mapping, geological mapping. We went to a lot of thermal areas. We went to an area called Whakapapa, which is where there's a lot of different mountains, as well as this one volcano that's called like Mount Doom, I believe. So there was a lot of great opportunities to kind of learn about the landscape of New Zealand and all of the different geological things that are very unique to New Zealand.
Well, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right, and Ricky, you had quite a long flight as well, and you were traveling with the women's soccer team here. Tell us about the two aspects of that trip.
Yeah. So we went to South Africa, and then went to London, England, and so it was it was an amazing trip. Much like, I don't know, I felt some kind of way like being in South Africa, which is also a big rugby, a nation that cares about their rugby. Like when you mentioned the All Blacks, I was like, all right, well, what about the Springboks? Like, hold on. Um, but no, so like learning about different cultures, like Allison said, was absolutely like just life changing. Not to be too hyperbolic, but I'd never been to Africa. I'd never been to the continent of Africa before. And so when Coach Ambrose approached me with the opportunity, mine was a little bit different. Where Allison had a little bit more like an active role in like planning and like the role of a sport administrator, and learning about kind of those behind the scene things was really cool. Like for me, way less involved. They just like came to me, they were like, do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, like yeah. And so I didn't necessarily play a role in like picking where we went or anything like that. I was more just a little bit of a I kind of was a companion, like I went with them. And so, for them to reach out to me, them being Vanderbilt Soccer, to reach out to me and allow me to be a part of that group and to be kind of, a team member for that trip was really special. Um, I think we had some amazing experiences seeing, the universal language that is sport, the universal language that is soccer, or, football. Though I did learn that South Africa is also a country that refers to this game as soccer. So there you go. So there you go. That's a fun fact. Y'all can take that, use it at a party or something. I don't know. But no, it was incredible. It was incredible. We met amazing people and were able to build these connections, to folks on the other side of the world. It was a 15-hour flight, longest flight I've ever been on. I don't think I'm ever beaten it. So I think that will stay always as the longest flight. But it was incredible. And then our time in England was amazing. I mean, that's where football was born. That's where I sound really pretentious when I refer to soccer as football, so I'm gonna not do it. That's where soccer was born. And so learning a little bit about the history of the games, learning about these, old clubs like that are as old as Vanderbilt, if not older than Vanderbilt. These, teams, these soccer clubs, was incredible. And I think, Allison, something that you kind of mentioned about, where does this idea even stem from? Like, why are you thinking to leave the country? One of the things that jumped out to me is I was just thinking, was like, because it was really special to be in England with Coach Ambrose, who's, from Sheffield, to be in England with Coach Stacey Baum, who's from London. So having coaches, and I know Coach Oregon is also not from the United States. And so, having that perspective and maybe like, knowing that we're bringing that to the table. And for a lot of, the young women on our trip, and for me, like that's the first time I've been out of the country since I was in high school. And so it was a really, really, really amazing opportunity, and to kind of see a little bit more of the world, with somebody who maybe doesn't bring, an American upbringing and bias and experience to the table was really cool too. I felt like we got challenged in new ways and got to stretch and grow in new ways.
Mm-hmm. Ricky, thinking about South Africa specifically, in what ways did the members of the women's soccer team have a chance to interact with South Africans or kids specifically? What did they notice about, you still think about like apartheid when you think of South Africa and just culture there, and how did you feel that learning about that or experiencing that really hit the traveling party from Vanderbilt while you were there?
I mean, I think, there's so much of a difference between reading about something or watching a documentary on something, speaking specifically around apartheid, and then actually going, to South Africa, and walking around and meeting people, learning about, we went to the District 6 Museum. That was incredible to be walked around that museum by people who grew up in this district, and could talk firsthand about the impacts that apartheid had on their families, could talk firsthand about being forcibly removed from their home, forced to live in what's called a township, which, were segregated, housing, and I'm really putting the term housing, like we're being really, really generous to call it that. And having people have to live there for multiple generations. And so, that was really deep and really impactful. And to read in a book that says, apartheid ended in 1991 or 1994, or, whatever, like, whatever date you might read, but to then speak to people who say, like, no, man, we're still living very much in the remnants of that society, and that impacts our lives on a day-to-day basis. And so, you find things that are new and maybe not as relatable, when you hear about someone else's existence, but then you also make connections to your own life. And, what does it mean to have also potentially grown up in the remnants of an apartheid society, growing up, as a Black person in the South. And so kind of hearing, their experiences, relating it back to experiences that you've talked to, at least for me, like my parents about, or, things like that. So that was incredible, honestly, Andrew. Like, and I think that's something that hit really hard. And I don't know if we were all prepared for what that was going to be like, because I think we did some reading and watched some movies and watched some documentaries and things like that, but really, I mean, we got a chance to go to Robben Island. Like, we got a chance to walk around in the prison where Nelson Mandela spent, years of his life. We actually saw the cell that Nelson Mandela was in. It still resonates, like it's something that it's one of those life-changing experiences that, I hope that everybody kind of walks away from that thinking, both about the past and, maybe what the human spirit can endure, but also thinking about what are things that I will take away, in my life that I may talk to my kids about, or the way that I treat people, or the way that I look at and view the world, has changed, being in South Africa and having a few of those experiences. But we got several opportunities to really engage and interact with people who live there and people who grew up there. And there were a few times where I think we were really challenged. Like, the worldview that we have was really challenged because there's so many ways that we're privileged by growing up in the United States that you may not think about until you end up somewhere else, and maybe you don't have those same privileges. And so I hope that everybody had so much that they could take away from, but it sparked a huge curiosity in me to continue to learn more about the culture in South Africa and the history.
That's incredible. You really see the value of these trips and everything you said there. And Alison, I know you had a really powerful experience here towards the end of the summer. Also, not only did you have a chance to go to New Zealand this summer, but you also took a trip to Guatemala. with student athletes. Can you tell us about how that trip was, the purpose of that trip? And I know it was a different situation. It wasn't just a team that went there. Fill us in on this trip.
Yeah, so this is actually the 10-year anniversary of our initial partnership with Souls for Souls, which is a Nashville-based nonprofit that does a lot around micro-enterprise opportunities in different countries, as well as shoe donations. So initially with Souls for Souls, our first trip was in 2013 to Tanzania. And we've been to different locations like Costa Rica, Cuba, Jamaica, Morocco, and now Guatemala. So the Souls for Souls trips kind of came from the need to provide opportunities for our student athletes to explore who they are outside of their sport. So this is an opportunity for student athletes from any team, depending on the time of year when it's offered, that can go and just serve and just kind of learn a little bit about themselves and a little bit about the country that they're serving in and the people that they're serving. But recently, so Souls for Souls, their whole travel kind of department changed because of COVID. They had to shift focus a bit. And Guatemala is a country that they have a very thriving micro enterprise partner in. So we actually decided to partner with one of our professors in the Owen Graduate School and also the director of the Turner Family Center. His name's Mario Avila. He is now joining us on our Souls for Souls trips to provide not a classroom component. It's not for credit. It's more of just to understand the country that we're serving in, and the social enterprise aspects of the country that we're serving in. So Mario brings that kind of perspective to share with our student athletes. So this trip to Guatemala we had 2 lacrosse student athletes, 2 bowlers, and a track student athlete. So a great mix of some of our teams. I think only 2 had been out of the country before, because we've got to mention that lacrosse went to Prague and Berlin as well this summer. Our women's basketball team went to Italy. So we had a lot of international travel happening, but those lacrosse student athletes, that was their first time out of the country, I believe. But for our track student athlete that went, she actually has 2 brothers that were adopted from Guatemala. So it was kind of like she had never been to the country, didn't know a lot about the Guatemalan culture, and was just so eager to learn and find out more about where her brothers came from and things that they might have experienced in Guatemala. So it was an amazing experience. We were there for a week. Again, Mario was such a great campus partner to go down with us and can kind of connect us with some local social enterprise companies, to where we could do tours, find out about the work that they're doing within the country of Guatemala. And Souls for Souls, the shoe distributions we did at different schools. I think we served over 750 kids, by providing shoes and getting to serve them in their local communities and just interact and play. And Ricky, you mentioned that sport is kind of the universal language, but a smile is also the universal language. Even though they spoke Spanish, we spoke English, we could kind of talk, but a smile is a smile, and that can always be shared.
Amazing. So one question I had is, sometimes these types of service trips, you'll see maybe like a high school student or American college student, they go on these trips and they're appear to be about the Instagram picture, and they can be criticized for that. In your experience on both of these trips, how did you see these experiences become more meaningful than just a chance to post a picture or to feel like they did something good for an hour that had no lasting impact? But were there conversations with students afterwards about how this changed them, or you know what I'm saying? Like, how does this become more meaningful than just that to brag about it?
Absolutely. So from the Guatemala standpoint, we had nightly reflections at dinner, talking about kind of the impact that we did during the day, or what everybody kind of was feeling about. I mean, it's hard too. It's hard to see people that don't have access to clean water or access to healthcare like we have. And it's difficult to kind of, reconcile that within, like, well, what kind of impact can I make and what can I do? So that's why it was also super useful and amazing to have Mario on the trip, because through his lens of social entrepreneurship, you can do good whatever you're doing, if that makes sense. Like, you don't have to just work for a nonprofit. You can work for a profit company that has this social responsibility track to it, right? So thinking about all of our different student athletes on this trip and careers that they're interested in, they could then kind of put that together with, okay, I might want to be a lawyer, but here's the kind of lawyer I want to be so I can make this kind of impact. So I mean, the nightly reflections, they are amazing. I said this in an email to Candace actually. And again, I want to thank Candace for valuing these type of experiences. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without Candace or our other leadership that values the opportunity for our student athletes to do these things. But in something I sent to Candace, I was like, it might sound a bit cliche, but if these student athletes are the ones that are making decisions in the future, I'm good with it. Like they are phenomenal and amazing. And the way that they talk through kind of their feelings and what they were getting out of this trip was really impactful to me.
Wow. Did you experience the same, Ricky, on your trips?
For sure. Yeah. I think, you know, Allison, I think did a wonderful job of really kind of, articulating like what, you know, what kind of impacts these sorts of things have. But, you know, for us, it was great to be amongst the people, of the country and know that like, that's gonna be something that, you know, kind of like we said, I mean, that's a great point, like that smile being a universal language of like being able to say like play with kids and teach little kids, you know, things about soccer, but also to just make connections with them. Um, that was really amazing. We got to partner with a soccer club down there called How Bay, like How Bay Soccer Club, and they have this kind of like tagline of more than a team, bigger than a game. And that really kind of became an unofficial theme of a lot of what we did, and a lot of the bonding that we did as a group, you know, kind of thinking about this from, you know, what are these connections that exist so far beyond the game that we play, but like making like real genuine connections between other people. And so yeah, so I think a lot about that. Honestly, Andrew, and like I don't know how much of you know, so much of what we did wasn't glamorous or like for like Instagram or you know anything like that. Um and so yeah, I hope that, you know, I believe that, you know, everyone who was down on that trip, like just the ways that we grew, the conversations that we had as we decompressed every night and talked through like, you know, what we saw, what we experienced, like how we were processing that. It's definitely going to be something that's genuine and lasting.
What did you both pick up on from the coaches who were involved? I mean, it's a lot of, you mentioned it's a lot of people going a long way, you know, so there's a lot of logistics, complications. It's not required that anyone goes on these trips. So from just a pure athletic standpoint, what did you pick up on from what the coaches see as the value of these trips in terms of the team building or the bonding, the camaraderie that comes from being together in an environment like this that's so different from, you know, maybe traveling to Starkville or Oxford? You know, they travel together, but not like this. So what is the value of these trips from that team standpoint, Allison?
Yeah, so I would say there's two different ways to look at it. Number one is a recruiting opportunity, right? We're getting the Vanderbilt brand out internationally. So I hope somebody in New Zealand saw Vanderbilt walking around and they're like, what's this place? And maybe they're a great swimmer and maybe we get in contact with them at some point, right? So there's a recruiting aspect of being able to travel internationally for sure. But then also it goes right back to that shared experience kind of situation. So for our swimmers, in one of the locations that we stayed, they were in very much a hostel like bunk room kind of accommodations. It certainly wasn't glamorous, to Ricky's point a little bit before. So like, I think they're still talking about that situation where they stayed. And that's something that hopefully brought them closer together. But the whole experience, I mean, when else can you travel with like 38 other people that are amazing and have the Vanderbilt tie like with you, but then you have this amazing experience when you get back that you can always reflect back on. So just the team building aspect is huge, I would think, from a coach's perspective as well.
Oh man, Andrew, so much, learned so much, observed so much. It was really cool to see. So the soccer team played two friendlies while we were on this international trip. So like seeing maybe how their skill sets went up against we played when we were in South Africa, we played University of Western Cape. We played a friendly with their team and also learning that like college athletics is really different.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the United States. Like everyone was like, wait, what is this? Like, what
Right.
are like what is this collection of people? Like, why are you here? And so like explaining like, oh yeah, like we have like a team like that's tied to a university. Everyone's like, are you a professional team? It's like, no, 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 like we're with a university. And so that was really cool. So like learning about that was really fun and just the ways that that's different. When we were in London, we got to play a friendly against Chelsea. So we played Chelsea like super huge, like Chelsea. Like we
Yeah.
played we their under 21s women's team. And so kind of getting that like and interestingly enough, we played them on the same day that like their women's team won the Premier League. Like and
Oh,
so we were playing like their kind of selects under 21s who were like coming up to be a part of that amazing team, amazing infrastructure. We got to see their training grounds and like play a play a match on their training grounds. So like that was really cool. Um, seeing like maybe the different styles of play, like how that translates, across the pond. I hate that I said it. I was like, don't say across the pond the whole
You
time.
did it. You did it.
didn't you
Um,
learn some Cockney accent or something too,
I
Ricky?
did.
Or
Yeah. I learned about like Cockney rhyming.
yeah.
So like being on the old dog and bone, like that kind of stuff. Like it's a whole thing. And that's so cringy. Like there's so many people who would like probably turn this off now. I get it, I understand. But no, it was incredible. Like so like seeing like the way that like we compete against, maybe like we're a little bit more kind of physical. At least talking to some of the parents as we were watching the match, some of the parents from over in London, like she's like, your girls are quite physical, aren't they? I was like, yeah, they kind of mix it up. So that was really neat. And that was once again, once in a lifetime experiences. Like when are you gonna get to do that ever again?
Mhm.
So gaining access to those sorts of things and then reflecting. And so taking a moment to like, let's just kind of inhale, exhale, and think about where we are
Yeah.
and like what we did today.
Mhm.
Really special.
Alison, did you have any stories about how Vanderbilt was perceived by either people in New Zealand or Guatemala? Ricky, any other stories about? I'm just interested in, you got a group of 40 people with Vanderbilt on their chest or that V, like, did you run into any alums or
So in
Yeah.
Guatemala, actually, we were having breakfast at the hotel we were staying at, and there was a law school alum that walked through the lobby, and we talked to him for a little bit, and then in another coffee shop in Guatemala, we ran into somebody from Florida who wanted to talk about football.
okay.
So that was something I would say from a New Zealand standpoint. I don't think we really ran into any alums there. But lots of people noticing like, what is this V, and asking questions and things like that. So hopefully we represented the Vanderbilt brand very well in New Zealand.
I'm sure
Mhm.
you did. So even
Yes,
like when
sir.
I just go on a vacation with my family, I always feel kind of energized coming back. I mean, you miss being on vacation, but I always feel like I had like some new ideas, or I want to try to implement something I learned on this trip, even if it wasn't a sports related trip. So I'm sure you both came back from New Zealand, Guatemala, England, South Africa with a fresh perspective on what you do or what you'd like to see Vanderbilt do. Is there anything like how are these trips like still living with you? And how are you using this experience to change the way you do things or to introduce new programming or philosophies here in athletics?
And
Alison
oh,
or Ricky, go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, go ahead, Ricky.
no, I mean, I think a obviously bonded to the team, like forever. Shout out to Vanderbilt women's soccer. So I think that's been something that's lasted. I feel like I came back, um, obviously with a fresh perspective around like the value of these sorts of, experiences, and how do you recreate these environments in between those every 4 years where you're able to, kind of travel abroad, seeing the value of that in the way that the team seems to have gelled and bonded. And so how do you now take that to other teams, to other groups within the athletic department to talk through, like, here's the value in having, like, kind of really deep, authentic, and impactful conversations around the way that we treat one another as people and view each other. And, I think those sorts of things, it really kind of got my brain going. I'd be remiss if I did not mention, I came back from England with a love of mine now, like for English Premier League. We got to go to Premier League match. We saw Liverpool versus Southampton in Southampton, which was awesome. I came back with a love for my, Aston Villa. That's now my team.
All
I
right.
feel like I'm a part of it. I'm a part of the community. They may not know I'm a part of it, but I feel like I'm a part of it. So had to definitely mention them, up the Villa. But no, I think really kind of coming back with a new, refreshed viewpoint and perspective on the value of, like, making these connections, and the value of, kind of listening to one another, and the ways that me as an adult grew from listening to the perspective of young people, and how that kind of changes, you know my interactions, and the way that maybe I, like, think about how I do my job. So yeah.
Very cool. How about you, Allison?
So the mission of the Ingram Center for Student Athlete Success is to provide unmatched post-grad preparation by equipping our student athletes with resources to maximize their potential. I
Mm.
can't think of a better way to live out that mission than providing experiences like we've been able to provide this summer, to explore more about kind of what motivates you, what's your why as a person. These trips are amazing for that. It's the Souls for Souls trip and the connection with the Owen Graduate School. That trip is one where, again, it's not for class credit. It's not, does not have a sport component to it. It is just an opportunity to kind of explore who you are as a person and who you are in this world and what you want to be. So those trips are my favorite for that reason. But we want to meet our student athletes where they are and provide these experiences that can then, in John Ingram's words, deliver them to their next destination, ready for whatever that is to make an impact in this world. And I hope that's what we're doing by providing some of these trips.
Okay. And the last question for both of you, like, was there a moment that you remember on your trips where you saw a student engaging, with someone, or a story that they told at one of these reflections at night, or something they said on the plane ride back, that to you kind of was like, yeah, that's why we do this, like what image or conversation sticks with you from a student athlete on one of these trips that, like, really hit home of, yeah, this is the value of this? Whoever has one ready to go.
You
Ricky?
got
All
it?
right.
I
All
got
right.
one if you got one, Ricky.
Yeah.
So in Guatemala, we had one of our student athletes this was way out of her comfort zone. We are washing the feet of the children that we're serving, lots of different kind of environments that we're in, just super, super out of her comfort zone. And she was fitting one young boy for shoes, and he got up and he gave her a big hug. And she looked at me like, is this okay? What should I do? What's happening? And I was like, it's good. It's, this is fine. Do whatever you feel like you want to do in this moment. And so she gave him a big hug back. And that was, oh my gosh, my heart just melted right then. But to see her really kind of get out of her comfort zone, and be in the moment and serve in that moment was amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is the day that we played the friendly against University of Western Cape, and then stuck around afterwards to watch, another soccer match. And then after that, we had what's called a braai, which is like a South African barbecue. I guess is the best way to describe it. But we had a Brian, and all the teams that competed came together to just eat a meal. And before you know it, there's like a DJ playing music. I don't even know how this happened. There's like a DJ playing music. I don't know if he was just walking by or what. All the tables have been cleared out of the middle of the room, and everyone's just holding hands and dancing. Like it's so, it almost sounds made up. Like it sounds like that's not what y'all did. But like that's what happened. And that's like maybe one of the lasting memories and just lasting images that I have of that trip. Everyone smiling and just holding hands, and it's people that were just competing against one another, and just kind of the speech that Coach Ambrose gave after, kind of during that evening, where he really talked about, kind of his love for the game of soccer. And one of the things that he loves about it, I think his quote was, the game knows no race, it knows no class. It's just it's something that brings us together. And that message with that mental image, man, like that's the trip. Like if I had to kind of sum it up in one thing, it's it's that right there. And I it was awesome. It's beautiful. Like it's just it's a really cool moment. And I probably showed like my kids the video of everyone dancing around like 100 times. And just the joy that you see on their faces. I don't know if everybody's like, I do have video of a lot of people dancing. So, just be
Are
nice
you
to know.
taking all of it, or we get to see you dance too, Ricky, or you're behind the
Man,
camera?
I'm behind the camera, man.
Uh,
Come on, that's not, nobody needs to see that, that.
and okay, so I lied. One last question. Ricky, you mentioned showing your family the videos. Allison, I know your daughter got a chance to go with you to New Zealand. I mean, just as a parent, like what was that experience like to have your own child with you experiencing that together?
Oh yeah, I mean it was phenomenal. It was her first time on a trip like that. That 14-hour plane ride was something else for sure. But to be able to I mean, how could I not be so grateful for the opportunity that my daughter was able to see not only all our young women on the swimming team as people to look up to, right? But like to get to experience the culture of the New Zealand people was phenomenal for her. And I hope something she will always remember as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know you both are
That's
busy.
awesome.
Thank you for sharing these stories about your summer. I won't even call them summer vacations. It was your work, but like amazing trips that you were able to make, and shedding some light for people on what our student athletes have an opportunity to do off the court. Both of you are such great representatives of Vanderbilt. I think our fans who are watching this will probably see you at a lot of sporting events, and just our coaches and some of the high profile administrators get more of the attention, but there are so many great people in this building, and I just really appreciate you joining the show today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.